Hello. I have had lots of people ask me what's involved when we do either a women's health appointment or a postnatal appointment where we're trying to work on pelvic floor release, and getting to the root cause of pelvic pain, dysfunction that's like deeper. So when we do internal release work, we will be working particularly with scars and with rebalancing in particular. So I'll just let you know what we do. So we have a very unique way of working when we do this, and it's very specific to making sure everything is in balance. So we will first of all just check if there's any scar tissues on the perineum, any episiotomy scars, any tears, scars, puckering, anything that might be causing a dragging off to one side or a pull. So even sometimes straight away you can see that there's a pull through to one side of the whole perineum area. You can see that there might be like a puckering down towards the anal sphincter. So you can see why there might just be issues generally with wiping, or with a heaviness, or with a pressure, just pain, for example, with insertion or of like Tampax, or with sexual intercourse. So you can see if there's you can see the mechanism of a pain kind of like adaptation, so the muscles adapting to that, or scar tissue. So first of all, we'll take a look and see exactly what's going on in terms of scar tissue. I quite often will spend time then actually with the scar tissue on the perineum, so we can get that a little bit more comfortable. So quite a lot of the time there'll be issues with like stretch or a pull, and that's quite evident. So we can work with the scar tissue even just before we go particularly internally. And then when working internally, the most important thing to start with is working on the perineal body, which is really, really important with birth, because we can get tears, we can get cuts that come through that area. And so we end up working with the scar tissue in that area. We then would work on trying to get that released and balanced. And it's really important that the perineal body is balanced, because it's the center of our whole pelvis and how all of the scars work, how all the muscles work, and it's about getting that in balance. And I find that actually, if we can work on that perineal body, which is right in the center between the vagina and the anus, and get that a little bit working in a balanced way, every single muscle that attaches onto it finds its own place and finds its own path, which I find really, really fascinating. So it's a really central point. It can also be an incredibly painful point for people postnatally and then later on. And actually that pain sensation that people get will then set up a brand new muscle reaction. So sometimes they get really tight on one side and then the other side doesn't work, or the other way. So scars and pain set up two different things. They either go crazy tight on one side and then the other side relaxes off, or the muscles go mad around the scar because they're trying to protect it. So all of those things we will end up working on. Then when we get a little bit deeper into the pelvis, we will work on trying to make sure that we get a balance through both sides. We will check if there's any increased tone on one side compared to the other. We will check exactly what's going on at the front wall and the back wall. We'll make sure that the urethra hasn't been pulled off to one side or the other, and the same with the bladder. We will also check the cervix and all of the and whether it's been pulled off. And all I find a lot of the time is that if things are being pulled off one way or the other, that's when we start getting dysfunction. So as soon as we can get everything back in balance and the body knows where it's meant to be, it will actually tend to function quite well, which is great. So we tend to do some very gentle work to start with, and then if the people are happy, it's generally a really good conversation about, right, can you feel that? Can you feel that that feels a little bit tighter? Is that the pain that you get? And we just work through it. And most of the time after the first appointment, there's a really, really big difference in the balance of the muscles, which is great. We can also do some testing on what happens just in general life. So for example, if there's a lot of pressure that's going down into the pelvis for various reasons, like with coughing or with sneezing, or maybe when they're using their abdominal muscles, we can actually check internally whether the pressure is causing issues, just by making sure that we can do coughing and sneezing, see what happens. We can check whether the abdominal muscles are functioning well, and then compare that to what tension or pressure we then feel in the pelvis. So that's really nice. So when you feel the release work, quite often it can feel a little bit sore to start with, and then the more it releases, and most people just go, wow, that feels like it's melting, and it's very much a feeling of melting away. So I will work through any scar tissue to try and get it to unwind and release, and it's literally just gentle pressure. And often by working unwinding tissue and gently working with trying to get the body to absorb the scar tissue in a really positive way, get rid of anything. So for example, like if you've got a scar tissue that's like this, you can literally work through it to try and stop the pull, so it sort of like blends into the rest of the tissue, and then the body will pick it up and then allow it to just work with the rest of the body. Because I feel like if the body sees something as a bit of a foreign object, it will then work against it and go, oh, I don't like it. So a lot of what I do is really, really gentle. I work with a lot of women who've had vulvodynia and vaginismus and are quite fearful and quite scared of anything near that area. They haven't looked at it, they haven't felt it themselves, and that's high up on my experience of people that I've been working with, maybe even people who've had trauma and issues. And therefore it's a really gentle, very calming, lovely treatment. And actually most women, it's a very important conversation that we are talking all the way through, making sure people feel comfortable. And all of the time afterwards, it is always a really positive response. I've never had anyone feel like it's made anything worse. And every single time it's almost an immediate, wow, that feels so incredibly so much better. And then just knowing that you've got that balance back in the tissues is really, really nice. So I think that it's a really important thing that we do, and trying to get everything back in balance again, and to try and make sure that there isn't any pain in the pelvis that the body has to deal with for a long period of time. Because when there is a pull and things are being dragged off and there's scar tissue, it will cause dysfunction. The body knows what to do when everything's where it should be. The bladder can be held nicely, cervix, and we do things in the right way when things are balanced. And it's only when things are off balance and off course and there's pain that the body starts inhibiting muscles and it doesn't quite know what to do with it. So we get everything in balance, the body's happy, and most of the time the feeling is of melting. So that scar tissue, the pain melts away, which I always think is lovely. So come along and get your appointment booked in. We don't usually do the internal appointment at the first appointment. So what we'll do is we usually discuss everything, go through your whole medical history to see exactly the root cause of what might have been going on. I also work with a lot of women post-surgery as well. So sometimes actually having pelvic floor surgery can cause quite a lot of discomfort and issues, and also maybe their original cause hasn't been dealt with. So that's also something that I find really, really, really important, because actually then you're working with the original cause of why they thought they might have needed the surgery in the first place. And then we're also working on trying to get the body back in tune again post-surgery. I'm always really, really happy to answer any questions. So please drop me an email, or you can come in and we can have a chat about everything and have a chat about all of your options. Medical history is always a really, really big starting point for me, so I know exactly what your body's been through up until that very second that I meet you, and then we can kind of decide the best way forward. And it often doesn't take a lot of appointments internally to try and get things back in balance. Bodies are super smart, like they know where they want to be, and as long as you can help them get to that place where they want to be, they're pretty cool. They're like, yeah, that's good. I'm in the right place now. I'll just get on and do my job. And that's good. And we just go through a few strategies maybe on making sure that the body can adapt beautifully, and we're not placing too much pressure down into the abdomen and the belly, the pelvic floor, just in normal life. We go through a bit of that, and then, you know, we're good. We're really good. So I would love to see you all, and I hope that's helped answered a lot of your questions. But I'm always here. I'm always here to listen and to answer your questions. Thank you for listening. Bye.